Friday Night Racing.
On Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.
And you're very welcome along to Friday Night Racing here on Off the Ball. I'm Jerry Gilroy. We're with you every Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock on offtheball.com and across all of our social channels. And of course, we're also part of the Off the Ball radio show on News Talk every Friday evening from 8 as well. Our guest this week is Dr. Ciara Losty, who's a lecturer in applied sport and exercise psychology in WIT, but she's also involved in the Jockey Pathway programme, which is the main reason we have Ciara with us this week. Johnny Ward is also here. Johnny, how are you?
Not too bad, Jerry. How are you?
Ciara, how are you getting on?
Hi, Jerry. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Look, this is a great time to be talking to you. We all need a little bit of psychology and psychological help in our lives at the moment. How are you dealing with lockdown?
Kind of keeping a bit of structure on the day as much as possible, making sure it's the same kind of wake up time, kind of putting a bookend to each end of the day. So the same wake up time, the same sleep time, but I have the same struggles as everybody else has in relation to managing work and managing childcare. But being kind to ourselves is really important at this time, and having reasonable expectations of what you can achieve in your day is really important.
Like reasonable expectations and being kind to yourself, they sound like simple, easy things to do, but actually they're some of the hardest things in the world to properly achieve.
Yeah, and I think it's really about maintaining our safety and our health really is our priority. So just really getting the simple, basic things right at this time is really important. So your sleep, your nutrition, the really basic, simple things are the most important at this particular time. And all the other stuff, really, you won't be judged, whether it's work, on what you did this time last year, because we're in this completely new normal, and there's no way that we can reproduce or meet the same targets that we ever could before. So we're not actually really working from home as such. I see that a lot on social media. We're being asked to work at home with completely different demands on us. So we just have to be nice to ourselves in this kind of new normal and see how things actually pan out.
Yeah, working from home would be great, except your kids are at home at the same time, and it's like, well, this isn't actually working from home. This is childcare plus working from home at the same time, which, is a juggling act that I'm frankly not qualified for.
Yes, that's a challenge, and my child has made an entrance on a few Zoom meetings last week as well. But, I think everybody is I suppose, has an actual reasonable expectation of what people can do and what they can manage within the actual restrictions. And I just wouldn't be looking at kind of your Instagram, your social media, but you should be baking this or making this or teaching this. It really genuinely is about basic things, keeping yourself fit, well, healthy, getting outside for your level or some kind of physical activity or exercise every day is very important as well, just kind of maintaining your well-being and your anxiety. So it's until maybe the time that exercise or physical activity we could do it whenever we wanted before, and it's now when this autonomy is taken away from us that people are flocking to be outside now. But getting outside for that staying in your 2 kilometre radius, getting out for your 30 minutes is very important.
Yeah, I hope that there's actually a knock-on impact, that you take this away from people, they want it more, and then when you give it back to them, they're like, oh, I'm going to do this much more now. I'm going to finally take proper care of myself, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to exercise for an hour a day. And what a transformation in all our lives that would be.
Absolutely, and it's just before the actual full kind of lockdown came into play that people flocked to beaches and parks, and we had to actually rethink our strategy around that as a society as well. But isn't it amazing that we've been trying to get people to be active, we've been trying to get them to go outside, and it took something like this to prompt them, to move them to go to places of beauty or places where they found they could just even sit and relax and get a little bit of headspace, just go for a walk, that type of thing. But until that autonomy is often taken away from you, that you don't actually appreciate what's on your doorstep is really important. And I'd say people are actually exploring their own areas a little bit more and seeing what's actually in their own vicinity and within their community, because we were restricted within that radius.
We found 2 separate parks that we didn't know existed, and I've lived in the house for 10 years. I'm not lying. I've literally been in 2 separate green spaces that I'm like, well, this isn't bad, actually. Why don't we ever come here? So, yeah, you're 100% correct. Johnny, you're a man who notoriously likes to look after himself well in good times and bad. How are you keeping?
Not bad, yeah. Ciara's touched on a lot of kind of salient points there, I think. And I was kind of reminded of Patrick Kavanagh's poem, In a Skiing Road, on July evening, where he talks about there's there's not a stone or a mile of road that he doesn't know about in his local area because he's walked it so often. And I feel a little bit more like that now, that like you, Jared, I'd never been to the War Memorial Gardens, which is within my 2K radius, and what a shocking omission that was. But I'm getting to know my local area just by walking around it. And I firmly believe from the crisis that this has been that there will be massive kind of positives to take out of it if you wish to look for those positives, such that so many people now are exercising that wouldn't otherwise have been. They're walking around their local area. They're not travelling as much, giving the climate a break. They're maybe growing stuff in a garden that they didn't know they had. And they're doing lots of things that basically probably normal life and work and wasting time on your phone probably deprive them of the chance of doing in their head for so long. And if you can stay healthy, there are sort of benefits from the lockdown giving you time to maybe think about your life and what ultimately matters. And I think there'll definitely be a lot of positives, mainly I suppose with how we work, and maybe I think people will work from home a lot more. People won't travel as much, and hopefully we'll look towards looking after the climate a bit more, I suppose, afterwards.
I've got to say, Johnny, you look great. Your skin is radiant. The dark rings under your eyes have faded. You look like a man who's embracing lockdown really well.
I am. You seem to have gotten your hair cut, which lends me to wonder who cut your hair.
It turns out we're all going to find out who's been having their better halves cut their hair for years. Mine is not a great job. Myself and my son had a hairdressing incident this week where it looked like we were applying to become extras in the filming for Chernobyl. So let's move on. Ciara, how did you become a sports psychologist? And can you talk to us a little bit about the different strands of sports psychology and how it actually applies to different sports? Because I presume a load of people kind of have become part of a particular school of thought, and that might not be the right one for each individual sport. How did you get into this in the first place?
So I come from more of a sports science background. So I did my degree in WIT in recreation and leisure management. There was no sports science when I was going to college. And then I did a master's in psychology in WIT, and between my master's and my PhD, I really worked in the applied area and got as much experience as I could as possible to become an accredited sports psychology service provider. And then I went on and I got my PhD then in 2016 through the University of Wales and the University of Glendalough in psychology as well. So now I'm an accredited sports psychology service provider to the Sports Institute in Ireland, and I'm also sit on the actual committee that would accredit other sports psychology service providers. So I'm not an actual psychologist, as I don't have a degree in psychology, but I work in the realm of sport and performance psychology.
Okay, because I know that there are controversies within the field of people who talk to sports people about performance, and in the past there's definitely been a debate about the merits of some people who have risen quite high within the industry and those who are actually accredited. You're obviously on the side of the accreditation.
Absolutely, yeah. I do run the actual, just to a full disclosure, I do run the masters with my colleague Jerry Fitzpatrick in WIT. We have a masters in applied sport and exercise psychology in WIT for nearly 20 years now. So that would be my day job as well. So kind of training people actually in the area and pushing them, really guiding them towards gaining their accreditation over time as well. So that is really important. Really, I suppose sports psychology for me and for my practitioner philosophy is about really understanding the athlete, really understanding what their triggers of stress and anxiety are. And if I understand those, I can actually help them put particular strategies into place. If you're kind of going in, doing the once-off motivational talk, it really is devaluing the profession of psychology. It isn't hitting. You aren't developing any relationships. You might actually do more harm than actually any good at all. And again, you might get an over sense of if something does happen or you do win the county final, that you might actually, you're only a small cog in a big wheel of what actually goes on from a performance perspective. So it is hard to sometimes quantify what we do. It isn't quite as measurable. It's a softer science in that way. And we use softer skills, but it definitely is a science, and that we are looking to really, I suppose the difference for someone that's accredited is really pushing for evidence-based practice. Everything that we do is guided by research and literature, and what does the evidence say about what we need to do, about how to actually develop maybe psychological skills or develop jockey's identity, whatever it is. It's going back to the literature and the science that actually guide the practice is really important.
What do you do with jockeys then? How does it work?
So I'm part of the jockey pathway program. So this is the multidisciplinary service team. So you have myself, you've had Wayne Middleton in, the S&C coach, and you've had Gillian O'Loughlin in, the dietitian as well. So within the jockey pathway system, there is free sports science services for all licensed jockeys in the country. So they can call HRI or they can call myself and arrange for an appointment, I suppose. And what we're really trying to do is really kind of change the culture, and that engaging in sports sciences is more normative within the jockey community, and actually that engaging in psychological services is also normative as well. So in the other sports, in the other areas I work in, seeing the sports psych is no big deal. It's just part of theologies of services that you engage in. You know, you go to one room for the physio, you go into another room for the psychologist. It's a little bit different in the racing community. So what you're trying to do really is come from a position of strength as well. So what strengths do the jockeys present with, and actually see, can we enhance them? What are they doing right? What are they doing really well? And can we develop those in any sense? So really moving away from the medical model of there's something broke and we need to fix them. So that's kind of, I suppose, my practitioner philosophy, but also as well the changing and the use of sports science within the racing community as well.
Very, very intriguing in terms of jockeys, Ciara, because most jockeys go out into a race thinking that they've little chance of winning. So in terms of the psychology of the jockeys, you know, the vast majority of jockeys don't ride many winners. They ride horses that generally have little actual chance. So it's inevitable that a lot of jockeys will go on bad streaks in terms of a succession of losers, and they can quickly maybe kind of go out of fashion in the eyes of many. So it must be intriguing to deal with jockeys, because so many of them are kind of, they get their living, but like essentially it's not like, 11 football players who've 50-50 chance of winning their next game, whatever. These are guys that have tough individual battles in every race.
Yeah, and that would be part of what I would do with them. It's really redefining what is success in what they actually do as well, because winning and losing is a poor evaluation of performance, and you can apply that to any area or any sport, that you can go out and you can perform, mediocre or poorly, but a decent horse gets you over the end. But getting a tune out of maybe a mediocre horse and getting them placed somewhere can be a really good performance goal. So again, thinking about the shift away from what you would see maybe in your racing post as such, of just who's got the most winners, really thinking about what was their performance like, what did they do really well, what did they actually need to work on, what did they learn from that particular race. So evaluating performances and the process is more valuable than the actual kind of focusing on whether you've won or lost.
And have the jockeys been kind of very receptive towards this?
Yeah, it's mixed. So generally, once they come in and they meet me and they have the chat and we have a session, I would have good traction. I would have good adherence. It's really, I suppose, it's getting them in the door first is really important. So sometimes I have to really rely on referrals from others in the multidisciplinary team, whether it's from Wayne or Gillian or from the Chief Medical Officer, Jennifer or Adrian would have sent jockeys to me. And once I kind of get that strong referral, once the jockey has made that connection, I call them within 24 hours and get that date and that time into the actual diary as well. And HRI are very flexible in the way I can call people, I can maybe meet them in different places. So to make it as flexible and easy for the jockey to engage with me in a comfortable manner and somewhere they're comfortable also speaking as well is very important.
Our guest this week is Dr. Ciara Losty here on Friday Night Racing. If you want to get involved, you can just use the hashtag #EveryRacingMoment. You can get us on Twitter at Off The Ball, Friday Night Racing, and Off The Ball, obviously brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie or follow the new Twitter account at HRI Racing. Ciara, when you're talking there about evaluating performance, it's very difficult for a jockey to do that. Is there a matrix of fairly obvious things that you can ask them to think back on a race or show them a race and go, did you do well or not in that race, irrespective of the outcome of the result?
Yeah, and it is, again, that's one of the unique parts of being a jockey as well, whereas in any other sport you'd have a coach or you'd even have teammates to say, talk to an actual performance with as well. So that's something that we do, is actually kind of evaluating performances, looking back over performances, and actually using video footage of good races and good performances to actually help them visualise and help them actually develop their own performance skills as well. So again, it's probing and asking the right questions in the right way. Or I often, sometimes I might get a text, I'd say, well done, and it might be like, yeah, but I didn't win. And then you're kind of coming back in, but yeah, what went well? What did you learn? If you were to do it again, if you were to ride that particular horse, what could you change? So really using kind of reframing things as opposed to just kind of statements to actual questions about how you can develop your own skills, and really kind of moving and shifting towards that growth mindset.
It's intriguing you say that, actually, Ciara, because if you assess like a league table in football, Leicester City finishing second, for example, would be an incredible result, for example, this season in the Premier League, and people would see that. In racing, you never get the ride of the week unless you win.
Yeah, and it's probably the one sport as well that I've seen that momentum often doesn't mean something as well. So you could be winning and racing really well, and then maybe a trainer just decides to try somebody else on a horse, just for fashion or flavour at that particular time or that week as well. So dealing with emotions around that as well is very important. Just because you've been riding well doesn't mean you're going to keep the actual ride on that particular horse as well. So that is, I suppose, engaging in sports psychology services allow you that kind of space to express those feelings, your personal feelings and your professional feelings, in a non-judgmental space. That's really important to somebody who's not connected to the racing community as well. I make no decisions about who's getting up on a horse. I have no skin in the game whatsoever, so they're totally free to express themselves.
Can I talk to you about the weird psychology that sports people have that they've had to embrace along the way to get to the point where they're doing things that are absolutely remarkable? Because most of the people you're dealing with in whatever sport or discipline, unless they're Joe Punter, have actually reached the top 1% of human endeavour in their own chosen field. And I'm always struck by there's a story of Jack Nicklaus saying that he never three-putted the final hole of a tournament and he never missed a 3-foot putt. And somebody tapping him on the shoulder and going, but I just saw you miss a 3-foot putt. And he goes, no, I didn't. And he had done. He was lying to himself. It was like Jack Nicklaus is obviously a complete outlier, and this is one psychological trick that he played on himself. But what do you do when somebody comes in? Like, how do you deal with those very elite people who are just weirdos, really, when it comes down to it?
Yeah, I don't know if they're weirdos. I just think they've kind of adapted maybe their thinking style, or what we call attribution theory as well, and that it's a self-serving bias, and that they're actually able to protect their own self-confidence and their own self-esteem by actually doing that. So when they do fail, they actually see it as a blip. That's kind of what you're saying. Oh, that's not me. That's just, I failed at that particular time, but that wouldn't be the norm for me. I've seen some great interviews actually with Serena Williams. Would be something like, she describes it, if when she's lost, it's like, I don't know what happened to me today. That never seems to happen, but it allows her to actually protect her self-esteem and her self-confidence, and be able to kind of just put it in the past and go out and perform again to the next day. So there's a difference, I suppose, there's a difference between constantly doing that and not learning from failure, if that makes sense. And then actually sometimes you can go out and absolutely have the best race of your life, but still somebody else wins. So again, taking the actual, I suppose, the emotion out of it and just seeing it for what it is from a performance perspective is very important.
And can we have any of that in our everyday lives? Is there any way that I can take a little bit of Jack Nicklaus and apply it to...
Well, you can't change what's in the past. You can only change, you can only focus on what's happening right here, right now. So being a little bit mindful and more present in what we do. And then we can't, again, predict the future either. But we can influence it in some way by what we're doing in the present moment. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. It's be alive as opposed to closing your mind off to things.
Yeah, and like making mistakes is part of the journey. You're supposed to make mistakes. How else are you supposed to learn? But we fail and fail forwards.
That does make sense. We had Richard Dunwoody on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he, in the 90s, I think it would have been, Johnny, you can correct me here if I'm wrong about this, but he in the 90s would have seen a sports psychologist who ended up being quite a prominent sports psychologist. The name escapes me now. At the very start of that guy's career. And the Sun splashed with Richard Dunmaddy because Yeah, obviously, to have the requirement to go and see somebody at that stage of his career suggested, I don't know, I don't want to indulge the Sun anymore because it was a ridiculous headline at the time, but presumably attitudes have changed to the point where nobody thinks that anymore. Or do you still find in different sports across this country that there is a reluctance to embrace the science of what you're talking about?
It is. We're a little bit probably behind the curve. We are definitely in the racing community. It is changing, but there's definitely kind of in racing a little bit of stigma still about, or it's kind of seen as a weakness to see a psychologist as opposed to, or a sports psychology service provider, as opposed to actually strengthening and engaging in some help. In other sports, it's definitely changing. It's very much part of the science services that are available. So it's a little bit different. GAA is a little bit mixed still as well. Again, I think it's got to do with how masculine some of the environments are. I think in racing as well, it's an incredibly masculine type environment, and then showing weakness, because even though they're your friends that you're in the weight room with, they're still your competitors at the end of the day as well. So showing any weakness is really seen as it's not a sign of strength at all. So there is definitely still a stigma around seeing sports psychology service providers in the racing community. And that's something, again, that I can adapt in my services. If I get that vibe off a jockey, I'll say, just sit in your car. When the next one person's gone out, I'll come out and get you, or I'll text you when you're free. So we even have to make time slots different, so they don't actually meet each other coming in and out.
It's quite remarkable that would still be the case here as well. And I saw like some of the League of Ireland players were Brendan Clark admitting that he'd contacted the PFAI, the players' representative body, just about general mental health during the COVID-19 crisis. And, you know, jockeys generally don't go to college. A lot of them don't go to secondary school right to the end. They're not particularly well educated just because of the nature of the game. And it is sad, I suppose, that it will be seen as a weakness when it's actually shown strength to actually try to better yourself.
Yeah, and that's a really, really good point, Johnny. That's really important. That's one big difference that I would see within the racing community that I would see in other sports. The development of dual careers and dual identity is really non-existent as such in the racing, and that if you engage in any other kind of even online courses, or you're doing something part-time, other jockeys perceive it as a weakness, and that you're not fully focused on your actual racing. Whereas in other sports, development of dual career, planning for your transition out of sport is celebrated. It's seen as a really positive thing, and all the literature and all the science shows that if you do have dual career development, and particularly, again, you're talking about people generally within that years, kind of between 16 to 26, that you have possibly a longer career, you're less likely to burn out, and you've better mental health and well-being as well. So that's something, we're trying to change. We brought on a performance lifestyle advisor that's just come on board actually this week officially in the Jockey Pathway Programme to look at career development and career opportunities for jockeys and training opportunities. So it doesn't have to be, not everybody's suitable for college either, and that's absolutely fine. So it could be something related to business, starting up your own yard, training, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. It can be tiddlywinks. It's just that you're developing and kind of giving yourself, I suppose, and your mind a rest from racing, because I do find that with jockeys, it's consuming. It's the riding out, then you're racing, then you're going home and you're watching it again on the TV. It's 24/7. It's non-stop.
It is absolutely. I suppose just the thing people should be conscious of is don't knock something you haven't tried. And if I'd be skeptical about this or that, but like if you did have any issues in your life, and this isn't necessarily to do with sport, I mean, there's absolutely no harm, no danger whatsoever in spending half an hour with somebody and evaluating whether it was any good to you or not.
Absolutely, and that'd be something that I'd say. And my job as well, that's something I just want to say, is to make myself redundant. I don't want to make jockeys or athletes reliant on me. You should be able to perform, and you don't need somebody there all the time. All the other athletes I work with, I'm not there at their competitions, I'm not there at their games. They have the tools in their toolbox. They're able to implement the strategies, particularly under pressure situations as well. So again, it's also coming from what's going well from a kind of perspective of strength is really important. And just like the way you might change up your strength and conditioning program, what's the point? There could be value in actually seeing, can you get a psychological edge on something? Or could you actually develop a particular psychological skill now that you haven't been able to work or didn't have time to work on before? Now is a great time, because you have lots of free time to be able to work on those particular strategies.
I was interested in what you were talking about, the identity there. It's very difficult for any sports person not to become so closely associated with their identity. I don't know if you saw Dermot Ling's Liquid Gale recently, but he talked about how as a teenager he was a hurler and that was who he was, and separating who Gizzy Ling on the field was from Dermot Ling as a human being becomes this very difficult part for him, especially when hurling is taken away from him early. I can only imagine what it's like for a young jockey who's 21 or 22 who's out of the game for 2 months or 3 months with a broken vertebrae or a broken leg. And I guess, I don't know if that's part of your job as well, or if there's other people who they access for that kind of stuff, but that's a completely different and a tricky conversation to be having.
Yeah, that's another key area to develop as well. I suppose you've your public self and you've got your private self, and particularly if somebody's injured, or now even when we have no racing or we have no sport, there is a kind of link even more so to kind of grab onto. There's that stronger identity that I am an athlete, and I may wear my gear around even more now because I really want to identify and hold on to something that I'm not able to do at this particular time. I even think it's more even ingrained within racing as well, because it's something generally most of the jockeys I've met have done since they're either it's in their family and they've done it since they can't even remember since they haven't been on a horse. They've done it, they've always had horses or access to horses, and it's completely ingrained. They generally maybe leave school early, and then they're racing, as an actual career as well. So that development of that normalisation of development of another identity is incredibly important. But it actually will prolong your racing career. It will prolong your performance career as well. It's not a weakness.
How do you foster that?
Again, it's really having conversations about it. It's about preparing for transition and change, and really highlighting again, there's a lot of stories out there, but when sports people, finish up and, they maybe suffer from kind of mental health issues, or they spiral into some kind of addiction. But there's lots of positive stories out there as well, and they don't kind of get that kind of positive airtime as well. So really highlighting the jockeys or the athletes that have made that positive transition, that have been able to actually manage, maybe it could be decelerated courses. You're not able to do things in kind of the same length or speed as maybe other students are, but maybe picking up modules and doing it slowly over time, and really highlighting those positive role models and cases, and really kind of providing vicarious experiences for other sports people or for other jockeys about people who have actually been really able to successfully transition out of sport. And there are some really good stories out there as well.
When you think back to how long ago it was that Richard Dunwoody had that, and he was actually actively seeking out that little 1% edge, I'm surprised that it's taken so long for the very top tier of jockeys to also look around and go, what is that 1% that's going to make me slightly better, and access these services? Because I would have thought, like you, Johnny, that if I'm struggling to make weight, I'm going to seek out the best dietitians in the world, and if I'm flat jockey, it's really worth my while to have a study of food and calorie intake and calorie deficits and strength and conditioning and pliability, and to lead the lifestyle that Tom Brady leads, to try and extend my career to the point where I am able to win another Guineas or a Derby, because it's worth it financially and it's worth it from a career perspective. But there's still a little gap there where people are like, look, I'm going to subsist on Red Bull and jellies.
Yeah, well, I'll come in there. I think, to be honest, I think racing's a long way behind in terms of an awful lot of data analysis, in terms of, Ciara was kind of alluding to there, what chance did you have on the horse, or was finishing third or fourth a good result? We judge jockeys kind of on fairly crude metrics in terms of victories and so forth, and it's really only in recent years, I think primarily Dr. Aidan McGoldrick's had a huge role in this. I remember writing pieces about jockeys, a lot of whom were still smoking cigarettes. You still see it outside of the weighing room, and quite before there was any sort of stock taken in terms of sports psychology, the jockeys had an awful long way to go. And bear in mind, still an awful lot of them are riding where they're clearly somewhat emaciated. So there's an awful long way to go. I think you're literally scratching the surface with jockeys in terms of their general well-being and career progress. And
so what, Johnny's going to change that? Like, what is does it take one of the best jockeys who are at the peak of their powers now to turn around and say, well, I've been doing this for a couple of years actually on the QT?
Yeah, but I don't know. Kira would be better to respond to. I don't really know what the sort of the take up is, or what would the jockeys what would Ruby Walsh say that he could have done more when he was riding. I feel that you speak to the likes of Billy Lee and particular jockeys who looked after their diet, and in terms of not only their diet but what exercise they did outside of riding horses, because that's one aspect to it. But considering the number of jockeys who suffer from depression in some shape or form, I think it's fairly easy to extrapolate that. A lot of them are not psychologically 100% going into every race, and it's as simple as that. And as I said, so many of them are struggling, so it probably needs, I think it actually needs conversations like the one we're having here, just to say, well, this actually is a pathway to progress, but also it's okay not to feel that you're full of confidence going into every race, because if you want to reach the top, or if you want to, literally be the best that you can be, that 1% multiplied by 1% and another 1%, another 1% makes a big difference.
Yeah, what do you think about that? Go on, sorry, Ciara.
Sorry, no, Johnny, you're just making some really good points. I genuinely think, having conversations like this genuinely do help normalise it, I suppose. We conducted some research in 2019 and we found that jockeys reported common mental health disorders at a much higher rate than in comparison to any other sports. Now, we're looking, Lewis King, a PhD student in WIT, his PhD is focused on that, and from that research we're looking into the prevalence and symptoms and stigma of mental health disorders a lot further. So we will have more research to share with you in the future. But conversations are really, really, really important. Normalising it is really important. Also, maybe we're going into the racing academies now, so actually introducing it at a much earlier age, even just general concepts, using the word psychology, putting a face to particular names, getting them to do basic psychological strategies and what they do, and just again normalising it as part of the sports science and the suite of sports science of services that are available to them. But I also think it's really important for jockeys to actually use and engage in the pathway services, because they don't have a team, because they don't have a support structure around them. If you're a junior B hurling or camogie team, you'd actually have your teammates even to draw on at this particular time. So because they're individualised athletes, and they're also athletes that are actually have to manage their weight as well, there are kind of, I suppose, they're more at risk for mental health issues than other athletes as well. So it puts them in a higher risk category anyway. So utilising the service, and really what I try and say to jockeys is creating a team. This is your team now. So you have your sports side, you have your strength and conditioning, you have nutritionists, you have access to physio as well. You have, your medical officer, and you use and you utilise your team around you. And at different times you might need more strength and conditioning. Different times you might need psychological support. Other times you might need nutrition support. And you pick and choose and use those team members around you to support you on your journey as you actually move through your racing career.
That makes sense. I also, you feel like the most ambitious ones will be the ones who are the most curious as well, because they're the ones who have decided that they're already maxing out on their strength and conditioning, they're already looking after their diet. Where else can I actually get that extra little bit? And the history of big time sport is full of people who weren't the most talented, but who worked the hardest and who found a way. And in whatever aspect of the sport it is, psychology is just one aspect of that, where you would definitely be curious to see, well, what are the little tricks that I can use that have been used in other sports or that other jockeys have used in the past that are going to make me that tiny 1% better, that's going to get me and my horse that nose in front at the finish line.
Absolutely, and it is sometimes it is that 1 or 2%. That's what we're talking about as well. But it also is your general health and well-being, your happiness. Like, a happy person is going to be a happy jockey. It works both ways. So there's a lot of stress within the racing. There's a lot of stress within the actual the training, the actual environment as well. And then you've got like your own personal stress as well. And they have generally, sometimes they've no coach, they've no teammates, they've nobody to talk to. So utilising and creating that team is incredibly important.
Are the younger generation automatically better at this? Is that what you're seeing? Or is it actually because there's a tradition within the sport, that the journey they have to make is exactly the same journey as the people before them. So there's no significant change in the 16-year-olds now from 16-year-olds 10 years ago.
Sorry, missed the first part here.
Are you finding the new generation are more open to this than previous generations, or are they the same?
I think so, and I think habits are less ingrained when you're younger as well. So you're a little bit more open to it. You've probably heard of it, and it's a little bit more normalised.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah. All right, Johnny, are you going to change your life?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Ciara spoke about no point having regrets. Like, if you look back in the past, no matter what has happened in your life, I would still be 37 and I would still be in the middle of this coronavirus crisis. But I think you do have to learn from the fact that the now and the future is what matters, and you can change your life and you can make changes, and you should always be open to ideas. And I certainly think with jockeys, I do actually think this program every Friday has helped in terms of bringing new voices in that people in racing probably wouldn't even be familiar with. And that reference you had, Ger, to Richard Dunwoody, and I remember another tabloid saying bonkers Bruno when Frank Bruno came out with mental health issues. We've come a long way in a short period of time, but I think probably still have a long way to go. And I'm slightly skeptical about, sports psychology within teams, and I think some lads are are maybe making careers out of it when there isn't necessarily the value to their conversation. But I think in racing, and I think we've an awful long way to go, and I can definitely attest to talking to a lot of jockeys who are struggling because of a lack of confidence, struggling because they don't feel they're appreciated, struggling because they appreciate that most of the pie is shared by a select number of jockeys, and the rest are scrapping for about 90%. And I think it's a challenge for them. And as Ciara said, it's literally 24/7, 365 days a year. You're nearly always riding or riding out, and it's hard to escape. It's hard to see the wood from the trees when you've nothing else there. And I would strongly endorse any jockey just going that extra yard and talking to the likes of Ciara to see if he or she can improve a little bit.
Yeah, I guess, Ciara, sorry, just to finish up on this, that's the point where we started off talking about performance and winning races, and you brought it back to the most important fundamental of all, which is trying to find some sense of wellness and happiness. And that's the pressure that Johnny's talking about. If you can learn to deal with that, you'll be a better jockey, because you're not constantly stressed about the fact that it is a very difficult life that you've chosen to get into. Yeah,
and I think even it's a good analogy kind of to use at this time with COVID-19, that we use this in sport a lot, but it really does apply to life. In these kind of situations, some people and athletes are actually thriving. They do really well. Athletes generally do have innate and develop resilience, and they see these they can adapt to these situations and actually, adapt their training, adapt their mindset. I'm working with athletes where, the Olympics is obviously postponed. So there's huge challenges and huge changes happening now to get ready for something 12 months or further down the road as well. Then some of us are kind of I'm really not so sure, I'm a little bit anxious about what's happening, and most of us probably are sitting in that kind of area, and that's absolutely fine as well. But just monitoring and being aware of your mood, and being monitored and being aware of your feelings and your emotions is incredibly important as well, so you can kind of adapt and change them and make sure that they're working for you and not against you. And then some people will actually in these times maybe have a more of a traumatic response, and they're maybe the jockeys or the athletes or the people that we really need to kind of whip round and, cocoon with the actual support services. So
interesting you say that, actually, Ciara. Sorry to cut in, just from the League of Ireland players' perspective, and I'm just using that as an example of sort of my other hat on. How difficult would it be for players who've had really tough pre-seasons and have gone into sort of 6 weeks of the season for this to happen, to upset that physical momentum and obviously mental momentum that you'd built up?
It's like the whole thing it's incredibly difficult, and we don't know what's going to happen either as well. And I see that with the Olympic athletes, it's huge, particularly for the ones who are possibly going to transition and actually retire. So their whole career trajectory is knocked off now. They're not sure what they're going to do or what they're going to, what they can actually do as well. But again, it's just focused on adapting your training. What can you do? Maintaining the really basic things to keep yourself well, which is your sleep and your nutrition. but also maybe training at home and actually engaging. So for someone in the League of Ireland, we maybe having structured phone calls or Zoom calls or Skype calls 3 times a week when you finish your particular training session, just the same way you actually would. So maintaining virtual communication is incredibly important. Having those little conversations and then allowing the player or the athlete or the jockey say, do you know what, I actually need to speak to the nutritionist now, or now I need maybe to talk to the psych. But if you have those virtual communications, you're allowing the space for the athlete to pick and choose what they actually might need or what support service they could actually engage in.
And even just asking them what they want to talk about. Sometimes those open-ended questions can be very powerful.
I've done this. We've had multidisciplinary meetings with teams this week and said, okay, we're going to do this again in 4 weeks. What do you need for the next 4 weeks? Who do you need to talk to? What support service do you need? You don't have to talk to this person one-to-one now, but that person will contact you after this meeting and we'll work on X, Y, Z. So that's really important. It's really important
as well, because like we'll say in the League of Ireland and in racing, right, I could barely name 5 people. I couldn't even name any of those who've come out as gay, for example. I can name very, very few who've come out with and said that they've had problems with depression. So there's definitely, in many sports, there's still a massive macho culture, and we do have to definitely challenge that. Like,
yeah, but again, you don't have to have something wrong to engage in sports psychology services as well. It's performance related. It's maybe developing an edge, honing your mental skills, your resilience, those types of things. But it'll also a space to allow to kind of talk and work on common mental health disorders as well.
Well, it is genuinely fascinating and important work that you're doing, Ciara. Thanks a million for explaining all of that to us, because I think we kind of scratched the surface of it there, but certainly we'd be happy to delve deeper at some point in the future. Keep up the good work, and thanks a million for joining us today.
Thanks, lads. Thanks a million for having me.
It's Dr. Ciara Losty there, and of course a reminder, Friday Night Racing on Off the Ball is brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie. The Tote Irish Injured Jockeys Fund, another winner last week, £100 banked because we didn't let Johnny pick for us. Which brings the total to €940. Corona.
It's not good for my sports psych. It's not good for my betting psychology, these constant digs, Ger, I'm telling you. Ciara's in the background there. She hadn't gone away either.
With 2 Group 1 races on the card, Royal Randwick in Australia is the highlight of the weekend's international racing. You can bet on and live stream Royal Randwick on thetote.com. The card is available now. We'll see you next week, 3 o'clock across all of our social channels, and then again at 8 o'clock on Off the Ball on News Talk. Take care.
Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.
Really putting everything he has, every last. Whatever happened. Update that live counter there now. He's put a real effort into this, Owen. You're absolutely spot on. He's really putting everything he has. Every last ounce of energy is going into this.
Just over that, just 30, Ray, just over a minute to go. You're going to have to get